We're here with the two candidates for Circuit Judge in the Ninth Circuit Group 37, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
All right. We appreciate you coming in. We have some questions. We're going to try to take care of this in about a half hour. We ask every candidate who comes in here, regardless of the race, a couple of questions to get started. The first question is, have you ever declared bankruptcy?
No.
No.
Okay. The next question is, have you ever been arrested?
No.
No.
Okay. All right. We also do background checks on everyone who comes in for an interview. And I wanted to mention to Mr. Feliciani that we had something come up on the background check for you. Now it's possible that someone with your name someone with your name came up when we were attempting to do the check on you. But we have a 1981 offense, burglary, no assault, unarmed, occupied dwelling.
Yes.
Could you explain that?
Yes, that was something that was sealed.
Okay. But I assume there was an arrest involved in
Yes.
that. Okay. All right. Well, can you give us any other details on that?
Yes, I was a college student, and I just got in with the wrong crowd. I mean, I made a mistake. Had a roommate that got me involved in something that I shouldn't have gotten involved with, and I admitted to it.
Anything that we might have missed on your record since then?
No.
Okay. Did that have any effect on your attempt to get a law license?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
And did that actually lead you to pursue the law?
You know, you learn from your mistakes, and that was certainly a mistake. I think I was 20 or 21.
Okay.
And I don't know what more to say about that. That's 30-something years ago.
Do you think it should give voters pause when they're making a choice in this race?
No, that was, like I said, 30-some-odd years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was 20 or 21 years old. I was stupid, and I took the punishment. And like I said, I got the record sealed. It was not an adjudication of any kind.
What was the punishment?
It's probation.
Okay. Could you, and we'll get to this question later on when you all are filming your videos, separate videos, but I'm interested, and I'll start with you, Mr. Feliciani, why you're running for judge.
Okay, I've been a lawyer for 23 years. I've given 22 years of service to the state of Florida. The first 6 years of my career, I was an assistant public defender representing indigent clients. In the last 17 years, I've been an assistant state attorney. And for 10 of those 17 years, I've been prosecuting sex crimes and child abuse cases. Those cases are very tough cases. Most every one of those cases is reported in the media. I provided you with information with respect to the number of cases that I've had throughout the years that were media cases. And through it all, I think I've learned a lot about myself, about dealing with people, about dealing with the public, about dealing with your adversaries, which would be, of course, the defense attorneys. I believe that I have the right demeanor to be a circuit judge. I have the right legal background as far as basis of knowledge and so forth. The skill, I believe that I'm a reasonable person. I have common sense, and I think because I have gotten a lot of endorsements from my adversaries, I think that shows that I'm respected in the legal community and shows the level of integrity that I have in the legal community. And I also believe that, a judge's position is to make the tough decisions, and you have to be able to know the law and follow the law. And I do that every time that I look at a case. I try to do what's right, what I believe to be the right thing, and I believe that I'll carry that over into being a circuit judge.
Now, Judge Polodna, you are, you've been on the bench, you're seeking re-election. Why are you seeking re-election?
Well, I think I've done a good job over the 8 years that I've been on the bench. I've presided over both criminal cases, and now I'm on the civil bench. So I spent the first 6.5 years on the criminal side of the law, and now I'm on the civil side. And I have endorsements from both criminal defense attorneys and Police Benevolence Association, the Fraternal Order of Police. Jeff Ashton has endorsed me, the current prosecutor in this circuit. Lawson Lamar, the retired prosecutor from this circuit. Even Bob Egan has endorsed me, and he's retired a long time ago from this circuit as the prosecutor. So I have the respect and support of both the criminal defense attorneys and the prosecutors and law enforcement in this community. Down in Osceola as well, I have the police chiefs, both from Kissimmee and St. Cloud, Lee Massey and Kissimmee, and Pete Gauntlet and St. Cloud. Now I'm on the civil bench, and I've gotten a lot of support from both the plaintiffs' firms and the defense firms. Everybody seems to be happy with the job I've been doing in the civil side as well. So I enjoy the job. I have an excellent record to run on, and I think re-election is something that I will continue to do the job very well.
Now that you've been on the bench for a number of years, even when you've done things for a long time, there are things you can improve. How can you improve on the bench?
I guess it sort of depends on which division you're in, but since I've moved into the civil division, obviously there's a lot of variety in civil cases. And so what I try to improve on each and every week is I get the hard copy of the Florida Law Weeklies, and I read all the civil cases that apply to my division. And it's such a vast area that you will learn until you retire, basically, on the civil side. The criminal side, on the other hand, you want to make sure that everybody gets a fair shake in your courtroom, including both the prosecutor and the defense. So you always got to be mindful of that. But I think in the area of the civil side now, it's a lot more and different legal issues each and every day. And civil, the way it's set up too, is you have a conference room similar to this, and you have hearings, and about every 15 or 30 minutes the entire lawyers change in and out, and it's a different legal issue that you're dealing with. And so you feel like you're doing a lot more with the law, and you have to keep reading and studying the law.
Mr. Feliciani, there are plenty of judges who are seeking re-election who have not drawn any opposition. Why did you choose to run in this group and to challenge Judge Polodna?
Okay. Well, the seat belongs to the public, so it really doesn't matter which race you kind of get into. I will tell you some things that I looked at, and I see you've got a piece of paper there that says the roving room. I mean, there's lots of things that you can do online to research how a judge is doing. That's one way to do that. Another way to do that is, of course, to look at the judicial polls that are done by the Central Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and then you can also look at a judge's reversal record. And looking at all those things, I determined to go ahead and run in this particular race.
Do you have any details about reversal?
Well, if you have access to Westlaw, or you have access to the 5th District Court of Appeals website, I think if you look at the number of reversals, they're pretty high. And you compare them to other judges.
Judge Polodna, what explains your number of reversals?
Well, I don't know if there's a statistic that he's referring to or not, but I don't think statistics are kept in that manner. But something I don't think my opponent understands is in this circuit, the divisions that I have been in is down in Osceola County. And for most of the 6.5 years that I was on the bench, our caseload was much higher than the similar circuit divisions up here. At any given time, we handled 900, 950 cases. And up here, the average caseload was about 500, 550. Additionally, if you're comparing my name with any other judge's name, I'm one of the few judges that spent almost 7 entire years on the criminal bench. Most of the rotations, you spend 2 to 3 years. So if you compare my name against any other judge's name, I've handled vastly more cases than any of the other judges. Additionally, we do our own violation of probations down in Osceola County. That's something they don't do up here in the divisions, which adds an additional 50 to 60 cases on your docket per month. And anyone that goes to prison, they appeal you. So I don't quite understand what statistic that my opponent's talking about. If there is a statistical analysis, which I don't think there is, I think my reversal rate, you'd have to compare it with the number of appeals, the number of reversals, and things of that nature, and I would be on the very low end of that. You don't sit on a criminal bench for 7 years and not get reversed on something. So I don't know what statistic he's talking about, so I really can't understand it or defend it because I don't know what he's referring to.
Do you want to explain a little more about what you're referring to, Mr. Feliciani?
Yeah, if it'll clear it up. I mean, it's very simple to do a search on Westlaw, and you can compare Judge Polodna to the other judge that's been down in Osceola County that's been on the bench for about the same amount of time. And if you look at the reversals, there's about 33 or 34 reversals compared to maybe 10 or 15 to the other judge. And the other thing that you see somewhat is, appellate courts are reluctant to say that a judge committed fundamental error. But I think, again, if you do a search, you're going to find that in a number of these cases that was found. And in fact, there was a case that was just recently overturned where some individual spent a year in prison and was the conviction was reversed and remanded. So.
Well, Judge, Mr. Feliciani mentioned that we have this roving green report, and we take these things with a grain of salt. But there were some comments that were made about your performance in the courtroom that I guess we wanted you to kind of address. And one of the respondents said that he thought that you were a good judge, but that you let a man with 3 DUIs and 9 months out on bond have it revoked after violating his bond for another DUI to be released again. And he goes on, another person claims that you are truly the worst judge in Osceola County, that you do whatever you please in the courtroom. And another one says that you have a tendency to get people to plead early without regard to the fact that they may not be guilty of the crime. And again, I don't know who these people are posting.
Right.
Could you talk about these comments in the aggregate?
Well, they're anonymous comments. I don't know if they come from lawyers or whomever. Some of those are really old as well, the comments that you're talking about. And that you're going to, over 7 years on the bench in the criminal division, you're going to do things that people disagree with. There's always one party that walks out of that courtroom that's angry at you or thinks you're the dumbest judge or whatever that comment was, and the other side thinks you're brilliant. And they don't go on the website and say, Judge Polodna is brilliant for sentencing this person to life. So the only comments you'll ever see, and that's with the judicial poll that just came out recently. I wasn't on it because I'm not in the criminal bench, but the anonymous comments were, in my opinion, way out of line for what type of judge you have on the circuit criminal bench right now, and they're anonymous statements. And so, if you have a beef about something, that's what the appellate courts are for. So I don't really know what those comments are referring to. If I knew a specific date and time and an incident that happened, I could perhaps remember it, but I don't.
Have you ever had any kind of discipline from the JQC?
No, I don't think I've ever had anyone complain. I think if there's a complaint, I think they let you know, but I have never gotten a complaint.
Have you ever been disciplined by the bar?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Feliciani, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses of the court system here in Florida?
Okay, I think one thing that's very good about our court system is they are open. I mean, that's why it seems like so many of these cases are reported out of Florida. I think that's a good thing that they're open courtrooms. They're open to everyone, as opposed to some other jurisdictions where they're not as open, and so you can't really have the press come in and do the coverage. The weaknesses, of course, is it seems like every year you're asked to do more and more for less and less, and I think one of the things that you have to look at is your resources, and you don't want to waste resources. You want to do things in a timely manner. You want to get things right the first time, and that way you can save the limited resources that we do have in our court system.
Same question to you, Judge.
The strengths and weaknesses? Strengths, I do agree that the open courtroom is a great idea. It gives the public a confidence in what's going on in the courtrooms. And what I did as on the criminal bench anyway, because usually that garners more media attention, things of that nature. I've always made it media friendly in my courtroom. In fact, I had Court TV did a week-long case of mine that they played all week long on their program, and we brought in an extra camera. Normally, I think the administrative order limits it to one camera, and then you can have as many still photographers as you'd like. But they put a robotic camera in right near me so they could get a good shot of the litigants and things of that nature. And secondly, what I try to do as far as open courtrooms are concerned is I don't like doing sidebars, especially in criminal cases, because people want to know and hear and see what's going on. And I didn't engage in plea conferences that much because the public is not privy to what is talked about in a plea conference. So if someone wants a break or a departure sentence, then they should be able to prove it, and there's a burden that they would have to show in front of everybody why their client should be given a more lenient sentence than what the guidelines call for. So I did things like that. I was prior to becoming a judge, I was an assistant county attorney for 5 years down in Osceola County, and one of my jobs is I had several of the boards down there, the Tourist Development Council and the Board of Adjustments, and I had to give them an annual update on how to make sure that what they did was in open sunshine and not in violation of any of the ethics that they have to go by talking to each other when it wasn't a public forum. So that's very important. The weaknesses, it really is a legislative issue, if you ask me, because we have right now really good group of judges on the civil and criminal benches, and the caseload is very high. And I like to joke that when I moved from criminal to civil down in Osceola County, it took 2 judges to replace me, because immediately they opened a 3rd division down there because there were so many cases that the 2 judges had to preside over for those years. And really, it was just shifting a division from up here to down there, so it wasn't any legislative help. But over the last 7-8 years, we have been cut to the bone, and people don't understand that, and that denies access to the courts a lot of times. Now in the civil division, when you look at where can I set this case for trial, it's got to be way out in the future, because we need more judges, we need more staff. That will help everyone have access to the court, whether or not it's in civil, criminal, family, the family law court, all of them, but up here and down in Osceola County, are just overburdened. And so that's the weakness, is really the amount of people that you have in the judicial system. We need more.
Mr. Feliciani, can you talk about your civil experience?
Yes. Before I went to law school, I was a litigation paralegal for an insurance defense firm for about 3 years. We did all kinds of civil litigation with respect to personal injury. So it'd be any kind of torts, so slip and fall, car accidents, products liability, medical malpractice. And I worked for a very large firm that did that. when I was in law school, I clerked for a law firm that represented probably 75% of the independent school districts in the state of Michigan. And the school districts in Michigan are a little bit different than the school districts here, because you can have some really small towns that maybe there are only 30,000 people that live in the town. And so that's the school district. So they wouldn't have attorneys on staff. So they would hire the firm that I was a clerk for. So we did a lot of election laws. We did labor and employment. We did some civil cases with respect to, back then it would have been like asbestos abatement and things like that. So that would have been my civil experience while I was in law school. When I graduated from law school, I got a job with the public defender's office. I worked there for 6 years, and then I left and went to work for a solo practitioner who did labor and employment and marital and family law for about 7 months. So that would be the extent of my civil background. So I do have some experience with civil cases. The last 17 years I have been prosecuting. We do have some contact in my division with some of the Jimmy Rice proceedings, which are civil in nature. It's civil commitment of sexually violent predator. But I don't do those cases. I'll work in conjunction with the attorneys that we have in our office that do those cases.
Excuse me. Well, let me ask you, Judge, do you think the court system does a good job in delivering equal justice for all, regardless of race, gender, or ethnicity?
I think it is, and I can only give that opinion from my experience, and really, it's the issue was more access to the courts is denied almost to everyone, regardless of your background and your ability to pay a lawyer and things of that nature, because the public defender, they do a good job representing everybody that they can, but again, they're overburdened. And again, when I was on the criminal bench down there, I had at any given time about 6 public defenders assigned to me in my division because there were so many cases. So it wasn't so much ethnicity or denying anyone based upon any minority status or anything like that. It's more the overall system, and I think that's an economic issue more so than ethnicity issue.
Same question to you, Mr. Feliciani.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it is an economic issue as opposed to perhaps a race or gender issue or ethnic background. Typically, if you look at the folks that get represented by the public defender's office, most of those folks are minorities. And I think for the most part, the public defenders do a very good job. I was a public defender for 6 years. I thought I did a pretty good job when I was with the public defender's office. A lot of my colleagues I thought did a really good job as well. But it's just the sheer numbers. I mean, you just don't have the numbers. The volume that a public defender has is going to be a lot more than a private attorney, and then the resources just aren't there because you can't necessarily hire an expert in one particular area if you're basically, your boss is telling you we don't have the money to do that. So I think I would agree that it is more of a financial kind of a situation as opposed to anything based upon race or gender or ethnicity.
I want to ask, and I'll start with you, Mr. Feliciani, and then go to Judge Polodna. Is there anything in your background outside of the legal work that you've detailed for us that makes you especially qualified to be a judge?
Well, it's interesting. I'm getting a little bit older now. And I think having the opportunity to watch my kids grow up, I have 2 great daughters. I have a wonderful wife. My mother actually lives with us. And so I think having really strong women in my life has helped me. I think when you get a little bit older and you have the opportunity to see your kids grow up, and you can kind of put things in perspective. You find what's important, and of course, family is important. You tend to be more of a big picture person, and I think that's what I am, as a big picture person. I try to fix things, make things work better. And I think, having the experience of being a dad and watching my kids grow up and have a very supportive spouse and family members, it's given me a perspective as to what's really important. I do want to tie that into a little bit about part of my career as, when you do sex crimes cases and child abuse cases, those are some of the toughest cases that you'll ever do. They're emotionally draining for everybody, the participants, the victims, the attorneys. But that also can give you a perspective in the sense that no matter what is happening in my life, it's not as bad as anything that these folks have been through. And it helps you put things into perspective and realize what's really important. And it also gives you, I think, an outlook on how to treat people, and you should treat people with respect and compassion because you don't really know what's going on with this person that may be before you. And the last thing you need to do is add more stress to an already stressful situation. So I think it's just my overall upbringing and my experience in the legal community that will give me a perspective that is, I think, well suited for being a judge.
Okay, Judge Polodna, what in your background apart from legal work?
Well, I'm a 20-year cancer survivor. I was set to be married in August of 1994, and I was diagnosed with lymphoma in April of 1994. My wife was able to move up our entire wedding, everything, to May 14th, 1994, so we just had our 20th anniversary. And then what came after that was I have 14-year-old triplets, plus another one. He's a 9-year-old. So if you want to learn patience and hard work, have triplets. And so that was the most awesome and unique experience I've ever had. I'm the proudest I could be because we didn't think we were going to have children at one point, and then we were blessed with triplets, and then our 9-year-old was planned. So we weren't crazy at the time. Our kids were about 4.5 years old and decided to have one more. So that, to me, right there, helps me be patient and understanding with litigants that come into my courtroom.
Mr. Feliciani, are there any circumstances where you would consider it appropriate to seal court records or to close court proceedings?
Well, of course, you have to abide by the Florida statutes that govern that. There are very limited situations where a courtroom can be sealed, specifically like the identity of a confidential informant if the defendant requests that it be sealed. There are some other situations that I think would be appropriate, but unfortunately I can't really comment on that because that would be my personal opinion, and personal opinions are not appropriate subject matter when you're running for judicial office. So unless it's covered by the Florida statutes or rules of criminal procedure or rules of court, then you're limited to when a courtroom can be sealed.
You want to ask Judge Polodna that question?
Probably the same answer, but yeah, sure, Judge. You want to tackle that same question?
It's statutory driven. I mean, the only time you close a courtroom is per the statutes, and so there's very few times that you actually close it down. And one of the few times is when a child under the age of 11 is testifying in court about some kind of sexual abuse, and that's a rare occasion that you have closed the courtroom to the public.
Judge, how do you deal with lawyers or others in the courtroom who might not be respectful to others in the courtroom?
To others or to the court?
If they a generally disrespectful attitude in your courtroom.
There's several ways you can handle it, really, and sometimes it might just be a momentary slip by the person if they're talking to their opponent or whatever, and I tend to sort of ignore that to see what's going on, but pay close attention to what they're saying at that point. If it becomes very disrespectful, you can stop the proceedings, and you may call the attorneys up to the bench and just talk about what is the issue. Is there a personal issue going on? Because you want the litigants to focus on their clients and what's the issue is that is before the court. And if it sometimes gets personal, hey, take a break. We'll recall your case. Let's go on to something else and recall your case. And truly, it doesn't happen that often. In the criminal courtroom, that was more the area that I was talking about just generally there. Sometimes the public defender and the prosecutors have to work together, and sometimes they get on each other's nerves or can be personal at some point. But you just give them a break, and I think they cool down and move on. And it's rare that a private attorney will have any kind of issue coming in with a prosecutor. And on the civil side, sometimes you get civil lawyers that don't like each other, and you just got to remind them of their professionalism, and it rarely ever gets out of hand. So I don't, you hear a lot of stories perhaps, or that's maybe the image out there, that lawyers misbehaving in the courtroom, and I know we just had one over in Brevard County, and that was very unusual. And I've never seen anything like that in my career. And I've been on the bench 8 years, and I bet I was a lawyer for 15 prior to becoming, and I've never seen anything get out of hand. And if you just give the lawyers a minute to cool down, I think that cooler heads prevail.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree, because especially we've had a couple of instances that have been reported in the media the last week, and when you're the judge, you're supposed to be above all that. No matter what you want to say was with respect to the incident in Brevard, some people I've talked to have thought that perhaps maybe the assistant public defender was trying to bait the judge, but the judge is supposed to be beyond all that. And so really, it's time to just take a break, take a recess, and let things cool down, and then you go back in there and you take care of business in an appropriate professional manner.
Quick question for you, Mr. Feliciani. Have you ever applied for a vacancy on the court?
No.
Okay. And Judge Polodna, that's how you originally went to the bench in 2006?
Absolutely, yeah. What I did is I had never really even considered being a judge. When I became a lawyer, I had worked 15 years, and what kind of planted the seed was one time the chief judge was discussing with us that a new position was going to be created. So I thought about, and it was going to go through the nomination process. So I started giving it some thought about that time, and that's when Judge John Morgan down in Osceola County was a county judge at the time. He got appointed to the circuit bench, and so literally within 2 or 3 months after talking with the chief judge, that county position came open down there, and I worked at the Osceola County Attorney's Office at the time. So I put my name in through the judicial nominating process, and that's a very rigorous process that only the top people get on the list that are sent to the governor's office, top 6. In that committee, it's a committee of 9 people, in their opinion. And when I was going through that process, a circuit judge was removed. It was Judge Henson at the time, and I was encouraged to put in for the circuit position. So I was actually on 2 lists at the same time. So I went up and interviewed with the governor's office for the Osceola County position, and then about 5 weeks later I went up and interviewed for the Orange Osceola circuit position. And when I was passed over for the county position, I didn't think I was going to get the circuit position, but about 4 weeks later you get a call from the governor, and he said, "How would you like to be a circuit judge?" And I obviously accepted, was excited about it. And to me, the judicial nominating process was a very non-political, at the time, maybe it's changed, but a non-political process, because I didn't have any political connections anywhere, and Governor Bush was the one that appointed me, and I'm a graduate of the University of Florida, and so all of his close people were University of Miami graduates, so I didn't have anyone at the governor's level that I could talk to or call and say, hey, put in a good word for me. And so when I came through that process and was appointed, to me, it gave me great faith in the way that we appoint our judges, because I was a good example, and I had heard Governor Bush was never going to appoint a former assistant public defender as a judge, and so I kind of broke that mold as well, because I had spent 10 years as an assistant public defender. And so to me, it's a great process to go through, and it kind of tells you where you stack up against all of your other colleagues in the circuit.
Well, I guess we can continue until Sean reappears. I'd like to ask this question of judicial candidates. Do you have, Mr. Feliciani, someone that you would consider to be kind of a model judge, a judge to aspire to? Either that you've come across personally, or that you've become aware of just by being a lawyer?
Yeah, I had the really good fortune to be in front of a judge up in Seminole County. The first felony judge that I was in front of, his name is Alan Dickey. He's been a judge for, I think, over 30 years. And he would religiously read the Florida Law Weeklies like every week. I mean, he knew every case that came out, and he studied the law. He treated everybody with dignity and respect. He ruled against you a bunch of times. He ruled for you, but you never got the feeling that anything was personal. And he tried to foster a camaraderie with the folks that were in his courtroom. So, for example, I was an assistant public defender when I was before him. And so typically, it'd be lunchtime, so it's me, the other assistant public defender, the judge, the judicial assistant, the assistant state attorneys that were on the docket. We'd all go out and we'd have lunch together. The court reporter, sometimes the clerk, the courtroom deputy. So I just think the way that he handled the courtroom was very admirable. I think the way that he treated people was very admirable. And it was never anything personal. It was always very professional and very cordial. And I think what's nice now is that there is this move towards civility, and I think the bar oath has been changed in the last few years to add that civility clause in there. And you see that more, I think, with the criminal defense attorneys and the prosecuting attorneys. What I hear is that the civil bar is not as civil as the criminal bar. But I think Alan Dickey was just a fantastic judge. He's retiring this year, and somebody that I would aspire to be like.
Okay. Judge Polodna?
Judge John Morgan, circuit judge down in Osceola County, is the model judge. He's done criminal his entire judicial career, but he's the model judge. He was my mentor too when I got appointed, and he's still plugging away on the criminal bench and has no desire to rotate out of criminal. And I think the chief judge will probably keep him there as long as he wants to, because I'm one of only 2 circuit judges that live in Osceola County. So if I rotate up to Orange County, it requires yet another person that lives in Orange County to come down to Osceola County, and it's already without that train coming all the way to Osceola yet. I know we're getting it in 2016. We have 8 circuit judges down there, and only 2 of us live there, and that's sort of why I've stayed down in Osceola my entire judicial career. But yeah, Judge John Morgan is the model judge in this circuit as far as criminal, and we have quite a few good civil judges now. Our civil bench is very well, and I disagree with my opponent about the civility of civil lawyers. It's, again, rare that you have any kind of problem, and I'm a member of the Inns of Court, and that's what we teach and learn and things of that nature, is civility and professionalism, and it's a mix of civil lawyers that have very little experience to those that have a lot of experience, and a lot of judges participate and everything. So the civil bar and the smaller bars that are broken up, the Hispanic Bar Association and the Paul Perkins Bar Association, those are great organizations, and they're primarily geared towards civil law, but not entirely, and they help the younger lawyers, and that's what they need. They need mentors, they need someone who's got the experience, and those smaller bars help fill that void that we really don't have in the big bar. The Orange County Bar Association facilitates some of that, but that's a good way to promote civility in the courtrooms, is by joining the small, I don't want to call them small bars, but they're more geared towards different areas.
I think we've run out of time.